and olive oil come from plants that must be pruned for multiple years before bearing fruit. Both are processed by crushing and special presses. Grapes for wine are dried in the sun and then pressed by barefoot treading. Then the grape juice is collected up for fermentation. The process is long. The process crushes and grinds down something inherently beautiful once before for another purpose. In Matthew 26, we see Jesus enter the most painful and difficult moment of his life here on earth. Jesus goes to a place with his disciples called Gethsemane. This is just east of the Temple Mount area in Jerusalem on the lower slopes of the Mount of Olives. Surrounded by ancient olive trees, the Garden of Gethsemane means olive press. There the olives of the neighborhood were crushed for their oil. So too, the Son of God would be crushed here. Let's read verses 36 through 39. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." We see Jesus sitting in sorrow. He is deeply distressed. Jesus was disturbed. He knew not only death was coming, but he knew the physical horror that was waiting for him on his way to the cross. The translation of deeply grieved in Greek is periplios. This word is used in the Greek to convey the greatest sorrow imaginable. But Jesus wasn't the only one to encounter deep sorrow in the Bible, or this life for that matter. One of the coolest things about the Bible is that the emotions that these people feel, the hardships they faced, many of us can relate. Take Peter in Matthew 26. He wept bitterly and remembered that Jesus prophesied that he would deny him 3 times. Have you ever gone back on your word to someone? Have you ever encountered regret? Or in Psalm 88, the writer expresses this: "For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol." Sheol is this term used in the Bible that's often translating to hell or the grave. This writer is quite actually expressing that their soul is wrecked with what's going on. They are probably pretty close to crashing out. Or Jacob, as he mourned with what he thought was his son's death in Genesis 37. It says this in verses 34 through 35. Then Jacob tore his garments and put on a sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son for many days. All his other sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he said to them, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. If you have ever encountered the death of a loved one, then you know the feelings that come along with this. There's seemingly nothing anyone can do to alleviate the heartache you're experiencing. So we know that Jesus and countless other people in the Bible have encountered pain. And we know that we too encounter pain. So how do we encounter God in the midst of pain? We've been in this series for a while now, and it's been helping us understand how to follow Jesus. And I just want to remind you again that these practices are not a formula. These practices are meant to be used over a lifetime of devotion to following Jesus and will yield different outcomes in different seasons. And today, we are focusing on how to practice encountering the presence of God in the middle of pain. When we slow down, when we come to quiet before God, often the first thing that comes up is emotional pain. Have you ever tried to sit down and pray to God? Maybe it was like a New Year's resolution, or you were inspired to pray more after camp. What did you notice about it? Was it hard to focus in on certain things you were trying to pray for as your mind began to wander back and think about things that happened earlier that day? Was it hard to sit in gratitude and be thankful for things that God's provided for you? As you also sat in feelings of hurt or abandonment or rejection, like you guys were so close to practicing this practice, and we'll dive more into the how in a few minutes. But if we can take anything away from the Bible, And the lessons it teaches us about the subject, it's to meet with God always, even when it hurts. Jesus immediately turned to his Father before encountering the cross. The writers throughout the Psalms turned to God in the middle of their pain by putting pen to paper, by putting their heart to their head. The Jesus way is to meet with God in our pain always. And it can be easy to hide our pain from others. It seemingly is easy to laugh off the aching feeling of rejection or stuff down burning rage in the presence of others, but the Lord, he wants to hear from you. He wants to be the safe space where you can be as honest and as vulnerable as ever. If the King of Kings, Jesus, wept on his knees to God, then no one can say it's weak or silly or dumb to cry out to God the Father. And as tempting as it is to conceal our pain from anyone, the reality is that pain left unhealed can sabotage our transformation. But if we open it up to God, it can become the secret to our transformation. Like the wine and the olive oil I talked about earlier, a grape is inherently beautiful and useful on its own. And so too our lives were before hardship or tragedy. And the process to bring a bundle of grapes to wine or olives to oil, it takes time and it takes pressure and it takes patience. It takes remembering Jesus' words when he said this, not my will, but yours. Even though it's easier said than done, even though pain is never our preference. Just like the crushing to bring new wine, our lives will flow with the testimonies of God's faithfulness to teach, renew, and provide for us over time. And yes, that's a while down the line. It's not immediate, it's not instant, but I do know what is. You can open up to him right here tonight.